There was a time when American citizenship meant something. It meant you belonged to a nation, not just a piece of land or an abstract idea, but a people, a tradition, a contract between generations. It came with duties, jury service, paying taxes, defending the country in war. And it came with exclusive rights like voting, holding office, receiving the full protection of the United States government anywhere on earth. That America is in decline, if not completely gone. What we have now is not citizenship in the classic sense of the word, but effectively a cheap motel room key, handed out to anyone who knocks, honored by no one, and discarded without a second thought. Multiple presidential administrations are responsible for this, but none bears greater responsibility than the previous administration. The Biden-Harris administration presided over the single greatest act of national self-destruction in American history, which was the deliberate, systematic, and catastrophic erasure of the very concept of American citizenship. I'm going to walk you through how they did this, why it matters, and how we can restore it. First, let's explore the concept of citizenship and its origins. The idea of citizenship is very old. It's older than Christianity, older than Islam, older than most of the governments that have ever existed on this earth. The ancient Greeks, specifically the Athenians, developed the concept of the politis, the citizens who participated directly in the governance of the polis, which was the city-state. Aristotle wrote that man is a zoon politikon, a political animal, meaning that our humanity is fulfilled not in isolation but in the rights and duties of citizenship. The Roman Republic refined the idea. To be a Roman citizen was to possess a legal status more valuable than wealth and more powerful than an army. St. Paul famously invoked his Roman citizenship to escape crucifixion and demand trial before Caesar. To be a citizen meant you could not be tortured, you could not be executed without trial, and your voice mattered in the councils of power. The American founding fathers inherited this tradition and elevated it. When they declared independence, they did not declare the rights of humanity, they declared the rights of citizens. When they wrote the Constitution, they created a republic, defined explicitly as a government deriving its just powers from the consent of the governed, as expressed in our Declaration of Independence. Not from the consent of humanity, not from the consent of anyone who happens to cross the border, but from the consent of citizens. Mark Twain famously said, citizenship is what makes a republic. Monarchies can go along without it. What keeps a republic on its legs is good citizenship. In a republic, the citizen is the sovereign. He is the source of all power. And when the citizen is degraded, the republic is degraded. Citizenship has always been an exclusive franchise, not because Americans are cruel or xenophobic, but because a republic without boundaries is like a football game without sidelines. It descends into chaos and then stops being a game at all. The right to vote is meaningless if anyone and everyone can vote. The right to hold office is diluted if the office can be claimed by any transient. The right to receive government benefits becomes a joke when the benefits are handed out to anyone who arrives on our shores like 2 seconds ago. For most of American history, we understood this. Citizenship was hard to get. It required years of residence, demonstrated loyalty, language proficiency, knowledge of American history and government, and a genuine commitment to joining the American people. Naturalization ceremonies were solemn occasions because becoming an American was a transformation, not just a paperwork shuffle. Then we forgot all of this, and then we flung open our borders, and now we're living with the consequences. Next, let's get precise about the numbers to illustrate the enormity of what happened to this country in the 4 years of the Biden administration. Under Biden, from 2021 to 2025, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection recorded over 10 million encounters of illegal immigrants at the southern border. That is not a typo, that's 10 million illegal aliens in 4 years. To put that into perspective, it is more than the population of 41 individual U.S. states. It is equivalent to the entire population of Michigan taking a vacation to Mexico and then walking back across the border uninvited. It is more people than crossed the border in the entire decade of the 1980s. It is the largest wave of illegal immigration in American history by a factor of at least 3. But the number of encounters understates the true scale of what happened, because Border Patrol doesn't catch everyone. Right? The Department of Homeland Security estimates that for every person apprehended, at least 1 and probably 2 get through undetected. That means the true number of illegal aliens who entered into Biden is likely between 15 to 20 million. All right, we essentially imported huge chunks of entire populations of Latin American countries. Now, you add that to the existing illegal immigrant population in this country, Before Biden took office, there were estimates from about 11 to 12 million. Add the new arrivals, subtract deportations, and you have a current illegal immigrant population conservatively estimated at about 25 to 30 million people living in the United States without legal permission. That is almost 10% of the entire U.S. population. It is larger than the population of Texas. It is larger than the population of Australia. So the question then becomes, what exactly is the point of being a citizen anymore? If 30 million people can live here, work here, send their kids to our schools, receive emergency medical care, collect welfare benefits, and enjoy the protection of American law without ever pledging allegiance to this country, without ever learning English, paying little, if any at all, in taxes, without ever serving on a jury or fighting in a war, then what is the point of American citizenship? And the obvious answer is not much. Next, let's explore the systematic deconstruction of American citizenship. The border crisis, which worsened this problem, was not an accident. It was not incompetence. It was a deliberate policy decision. The Biden administration systematically dismantled every immigration enforcement mechanism the previous administrations used to protect the meaning of American citizenship. Title 42, remain in Mexico, blanket deportations, all of that was effectively scrapped or degraded. The result was a system of catch and release on an industrial scale. Illegal aliens are processed, they're given a court date years in the future, and released into the interior of the United States. Most never show up to their hearings, most never leave, and the Biden administration made it very clear that they had no intention of making them leave. Instead, Biden went ahead and tried to provide them with a pathway for citizenship. Now, why does any of this matter? Right? What happens when citizenship loses its meaning? Well, we're already seeing the answer to this. First, the welfare state collapses. Every social program in America, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, housing assistance, was designed for a country where the beneficiaries were citizens. The assumption was that the system would be funded by citizens and used by citizens, creating a closed loop of mutual obligation. But when you add 30 million non-citizens to the system, many of whom pay no taxes but consume benefits, the math breaks. Hospitals are closing in border states because they can't absorb the cost of uncompensated care. School districts are going bankrupt because they must educate the children of illegal aliens while their tax base shrinks. Emergency rooms are overwhelmed. Housing prices are soaring because supply cannot keep up with demand. Second, democratic accountability disappears. When millions of non-citizens live in a country, they cannot vote, at least in theory, but they can exert political power through other means like strikes, protests, like we saw with the violent anti-ICE protest in places like California and Minnesota. And most importantly, the threat of being naturalized. The Democratic Party has made no secret of its strategy, which is to legalize as many illegal aliens as possible, fast-track them to citizenship, and create a permanent voting bloc that would keep them in power indefinitely. This is not a conspiracy theory. Democrats have openly admitted this. The Biden administration's first major legislative proposal was a pathway to citizenship for 11 million legal aliens. In fact, hundreds of thousands of them were granted parole. They also sought to eliminate work requirements for welfare, and now the Democrats are actively fighting against the SAVE Act, which requires showing proof of citizenship to vote in our elections. Common sense, by the way. This is literally the norm in almost every country on earth, except ours. Third, national identity dissolves. A nation is not just an economy or a legal system. It is a people bound by shared history, shared language, shared culture, shared loyalty. America has been a nation of immigrants, but the old model required assimilation. The melting pot was supposed to transform newcomers into Americans, English-speaking, Constitution-respecting, flag-saluting Americans. That model is dead, sadly. The new model is multiculturalism, which says that all cultures are equal, that assimilation is oppression, that America should be a global commons where anyone can come and live according to their own customs without adapting to ours. The result is balkanization. We no longer share a common language. Over 60 million Americans speak a language other than English at home, and in many schools on the border, English is barely spoken at all. We no longer share a common history. Our educational system teaches that America is a system of oppression and that we ought to be ashamed of our ancestors. We no longer share common values. Massive majorities of recent immigrants come from countries where corruption is normal, where women are second-class citizens, where religious intolerance is law, and where violence is an acceptable tool of political negotiation. Case in point, Somalia. Okay? These values don't disappear when someone crosses our border. Nothing magically happens when people land in America. Instead, people take their habits with them from their old countries and they import them here to America. That's what's been happening to this country. Having explored this problem, what exactly is the solution? And the answer is restoring the meaning of citizenship. If American citizenship is to mean anything, we must take drastic, immediate, and oftentimes unpopular actions. First, secure the border. Thankfully, the Trump administration has done precisely that. Since Trump took office, border crossings have declined over 96%. Currently, migrant encounters at the U.S.-Mexico border are at their lowest in more than half a century. Second, end birthright citizenship for children of illegal immigrants. The 14th Amendment was written to guarantee citizenship to freed slaves, not to create a system wherein the entire world is just a plane flight away from becoming Americans. This country is one of the few that still grants automatic citizenship to anyone born in its soil, regardless of the parent's legal status. That policy is a disaster, is a magnet for anchor babies, and must be repealed. I'll do another in-depth video on that later. Third, deport every illegal alien. Not gradually, not with leniency, systematically and comprehensively. There are millions of people in this country who do not belong here and add little to no value to our country. Any non-citizen without legal status must be removed. Sanctuary cities that obstruct federal law enforcement must be stripped of funding. Employers who hire illegal workers must face criminal penalties. The message must be clear. If you're here illegally, you would not be allowed to stay. Fourth, end chain migration. Legal immigration should be limited to those who can contribute economically, speak English, share American values, and assimilate quickly. The current system, which prioritizes family reunification over national interests, has produced millions of legal immigrants with minimal human capital and no loyalty to the United States. Fifth, restore the meaning of naturalization. In order to be naturalized, people should be required to demonstrate proficient knowledge of American history, government, and English. New citizens should swear a genuine oath of allegiance, not some pro forma recitation. They should understand that they're joining a nation and not just renting a passport. We must conclude. I think the silent death of American citizenship is probably the greatest crisis facing our republic. It is more urgent than the debt, more dangerous than climate change, more destabilizing than any foreign adversary. Because if we're not a nation of citizens, if we're merely a collection of transients sharing a landmass, then we're not a nation at all. The ancient Greeks understood that citizenship requires boundaries. The Romans understood that citizenship requires exclusivity. The American founders understood that citizenship requires assimilation. We have abandoned all three principles, and we are watching the consequences unfold before our eyes. It's not too late, however. There's hope. The American people are waking up and realizing the disaster we foisted upon ourselves. Thankfully, the current administration, albeit imperfect, has undertaken multiple measures to help ameliorate the problem. As a result, for the first time in half a century, the U.S. experienced negative migration in 2025. We need more of this. More patriotic Americans and politicians alike must muster the will and the courage to act. That means they must be willing to be called names: racist, nativists, xenophobes, and deplorables, for defending the most basic principle of Republican government, that citizenship actually means something if we are to preserve our country and prevent it from dissolving into a global commons with no citizenship, no identity, and no future. We have to act now. Thanks for watching and listening. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section, and do not forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.